that, but you know what? She's like, Mom, I haven't given up. She's like, you finished at 30. She said, I can finish at 30. I said, yes, you can. I said, you can finish at 60. The only limitations that you should put on yourself is that I won't quit. I won't quit. Because if you quit, that's a choice. But if you put it out there like you can win, and if you set your mind on winning, you will win. And I believe that for all of our young people, you're winners. It's just a matter of starting a race. But if you finish a race, whether you finish first or you finish last, you have won because you completed the task. And so that will be my challenge to our young people, males and females. Start the race, finish on your own time, in your own terms, but at least finish. And that's something somebody can't take away from you, that joy of accomplishment. So
Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Are you complete, Miss Tasha? I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. You touched so many different points. And one of the ones that just stuck to me as you was going over, like, this is the question that I wanted that I'm putting out there as well. It's like, when it comes to sex education, like, do you think that should be something that's actually spoken on in the household first, or should that be left up to the school? I really think the household. I think us as parents. And both of y'all can unmute y'all mic so we can kind of just flow on this topic. But that's one very important thing, because that's the reason why actually having this podcast about skill sets for young mothers and young fathers. Because at some point that sexual education factor, you know, somebody made a choice that actually they probably didn't get the right type of counseling or the right type of information in the household first. And
mhm.
sometimes the school system, it be too late because they done been influenced so much by that point. It's like they're already looking at young boys, looking at young girls, and it's like, so they're really not gonna get the full importance of what's being said. So I really do believe that that needs to be done in the home as well. But what do you think is appropriate? What age and time do you think that is appropriate to
I
start?
would I would say if your child has a iPad or have access to TikTok or any of the social media platforms, if you're not sure what they're watching, you need to be informing them, because with my daughter, she saw um, sexual videos at school, in elementary school, in the 5th grade. And we had always had the conversation. I was blessed. My child didn't go to a daycare center. She stayed at home with my mom. My mom left for daycare center to take care of my daughter. So when she went to school at 2, she was potty trained and could talk. And so we would let her go to school. But we were already talking about good touch, bad touch. Who should be able to touch you in bad areas? And we used the clinical term. So it was like, if anyone touched your breast, or if anyone touched your vagina, or if anyone touched your derriere, we use the clinical terms. So if something did happen inappropriate and we had to go to court because we were using other words other than the clinical terms, that they wouldn't say that she didn't understand what was happening, or that they touched her inappropriately. And so being that normally inappropriate touch normally happen amongst your own age group at school, it was very important that we talked about good touch, bad touch. But for her, when we started having talks in middle school about sexual contact and what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate. Um, if she was, because some of her friends had started dating, and we was talking about what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate. And I said, well, let me ask this question. What is sex? And she told me exactly what it was. And I said, well, who told you that? She said, oh, one of my friends showed it to me on his phone. And they had the whole video. And so, I was like, okay, I ended the conversation and I went in the bathroom and had a whole lot of bad words to say. And I spoke with my mom about it. Yeah, because I'm livid at this point. So, I'm trying to keep it, my language at a minimum, but I am like, what?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not a fan of like a whole lot of stuff on social media. So like my friends would have to say, Tasha, I text you. And then they'll call me and say, Tasha, did you read the text? And because they know I'm not always on my phone. My phone could be in the car. I would left my phone at work for 2 days. I'm just not attached to it. So when my daughter said that to me, I was blown away. So I would suggest to any parent, if you're allowing your child to be on your phone and they're on a social media platform, you need to talk because sometimes it just pops up. Depending on what site they visit, sometimes indecent material show up on the phone and they'll watch it. Sometimes it's the cartoons itself. So I would say that those conversations need to start if you give them the phone. And either ask the question, what can you tell me about sex? And if they can tell you more than what you think they should know at their age, then I would say then you need to start having that conversation. And then also keep in mind, we have children as young as 9 and 10 having babies. So you need to think that's elementary school. You don't know what they're being exposed to at school and what they're seeing at the school. So, have you asked your child, have any of your classmates been pregnant? Because some of them have seen their classmates pregnant in elementary school. So,
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Well, I agree. I definitely wanted to kind of see what your perspective was on that as far as the wins and wheres. And I love that the fact that you did that, you guys did the good touch, bad touch, and had her using the clinical terms. That was very smart and proactive so that if anything did. Now that's smart. That's a jewel right there for other people that are raising kids to know because most times from what I'm accustomed to and what I've heard people around me saying is, like my lady, she said her grandma used to use the word pocketbook. Don't let nobody, your pocket.
mhm,
But now I never thought about it to the extent of using the proper terms until you brought that to my attention. So in moving forward, I think that's a great way for young people or any parents to go about raising their kids and having those certain topics of conversation with them, because it does make sense. Because if you go in the courtroom and you talk about your pocketbook, then then the person can probably get out from up under that because it could be interpreted that the child just doesn't understand
understand.
on. So that right there is a gem. Thank you so much. Joynetti, your perspective on when do we kind of pry into or look into or start having that conversation with our children about sexual education.
Um, well, first, I want to say thank you to Miss Tasha for sharing about, social media and how impactful that is for our young generation today. See, for me with my son, he was well into high school when this whole social media thing kind of blew up.
Mm,
And the way it really affected him was more of uh, the image, to try to keep up an image. And I noticed that with him, and we definitely had to go down those lines of having that conversation and things like that. Um, but to get to um, the sex talk, um, I think that we tend to kind of feel like our children aren't aware as they are. Um, they're very, very aware. They know more than what you think they know. And when I started I was I'm very blessed to have this open conversation with my son where we communicate very easily with each other. And it's something that I did with him from a child. When Miss Tasha mentioned, being blessed to have your baby be taken care of by your mom until she was a certain age and able to speak to you about what's going on and things like that that may be uncomfortable. I experienced the same thing. I didn't let my son go into like daycare until he was able to verbally tell me if something wasn't right. And I know that's not always the case for a lot of families, but I distinctly can remember him coming home one day like, "Hey, mom, Miss So and so, I'm not going to say her name, Miss So and so pinched my leg underneath the table." And I was like, "What?" you know and I was like, let me not get angry because I want to know this whole story. And I said, well, why did she do something like that? And he goes, well, she told me to be quiet, and I kept talking to, I guess, his friend that was there, and she came and she pinched my leg underneath the table. And I was like, oh, okay. And I really had to get myself together because I didn't want to act out in a way of the way I really wanted to act out, um, in rage. Um, but I wanted to also make sure I handled it in a way that he could he could see the proper way of handling something like that. And so, we did, me and his father, we talked about it, and I was like, no, this has to be addressed right now. It can't wait. And I love when people try to like manipulate a situation. And this is what, back to what Miss Tasha mentioned, knowing your child, getting to know who they are. And I'm very, very close with my son, and I distinctly told the head lady of the daycare, and she's like, well, did you think I'm like, listen, let me explain something to you. You know, my child was very descriptive in what he told me. He didn't change it at any time. He was very, very, he told me she pinched his leg underneath the table. He didn't say, hey, she just pinched me, or hey, she hit me, or anything. He gave me exact detail, and I believe it. From I never doubted it from when he first told me, and that was another thing I wanted to make sure that if he confided in me with something, that he would know my mom is going to have my back. She's going to believe me, and I can trust her with it. So that was very, very important to me, and to speak about sex. You know, I can remember kindergarten, my son coming home telling me he liked a little girl in his class. And I was like, you like her? Like, what do you mean? Like, he goes, well, she's my friend. She holds my hand when we line up and we walk down the hallway, and we have to hold hands, and I was just kind of like, okay, so from there I started telling him what was appropriate, what's inappropriate, what to do if somebody touches you in a place where you're not supposed to, things like that. It was like immediately right away because I also came from sexual abuse myself. So for me, it was like, no way I'm going to let something like this happen and him not be able to tell me, and then also with him being a little boy, I want him to know what's appropriate and what's not. If someone likes you, or if you like someone and they don't like you, if somebody says this is okay, or if they say it does, it's not. I think those things are very important right away, because I, you know, I think it's a natural thing that kids, they see that, especially if they're in the home with mommy and daddy. They see mommy kiss daddy. They see mommy be affectionate with dad. They see these things, and it's not that we're teaching them sex, but they see us interacting as a family and as a couple. So they're very, very aware of it. So I think it's as soon as you can possibly think that maybe they might have some type of curiosity somewhere, it's appropriate, and you don't have to get into the whole intercourse phase but right away. But I think it's important to let them know and be aware of their bodies first of all. I know children, as I'm going to speak for males because I have a son, erections happen very young, and they sometimes don't know what that is and don't know what that's about, So I'm just very big on communication. So